He doesn't have a handicapped placard. He simply doesn't want to walk from a distant parking space. He pulls straight into a handicapped spot and heads toward the mall entrance. Near the doors sits George Sullivan, a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran, resting in his wheelchair. George lost both of his legs below the knee in Vietnam back in 1969. He has lived in a wheelchair for 56 years. George watches the car park illegally. He wheels himself closer. "Excuse me, sir," George says calmly. "That's a handicapped spot. You don't have a placard." Brandon barely looks at him. "I'll only be a minute." "Sir, those spaces are reserved for people who actually need them," George replies. "People in wheelchairs. You'll need to move your car." Brandon stops and looks down at George with open contempt. "Who are you? The parking police?" "I'm someone who needs handicapped parking," George answers. "Please move your vehicle." Brandon glances at the wheelchair and smirks. "Look, old man, I'm in a rush. I'll move it when I'm done." "Sir, there are disabled people who rely on these spots," George says evenly. Brandon's expression hardens. "I don't have time for this." George wheels forward to keep up. "Sir, I'm asking you to move your car." Brandon suddenly spins around. "Stop following me." George remains calm. "I'm just asking you to do the right thing." That's when Brandon kicks George's wheelchair hard. The front wheel jerks violently. George, with no legs to brace himself, nearly falls forward out of the chair. "How about you roll away and mind your own business, old man?" Brandon snaps. "My father is William Mitchell, CEO of Tech Core Industries. We're worth $8 billion. Then Brandon kicks the wheelchair again, harder. The chair rolls backward and slams into a parking barrier. The impact sends pain through George's spine. Witnesses immediately start calling 911. Several people pull out their phones and begin recording. Mall security rushes over. "Sir, are you okay?" George is visibly shaken. "He kicked my wheelchair twice," George says. Providence police arrive and review the mall's security footage. The video is devastating. It shows George approaching politely. Brandon dismissing him. Brandon kicking the wheelchair. George nearly falling. Brandon kicking it again, harder, sending George crashing into the barrier. Officer Rodriguez finds Brandon inside the Apple store. "Brandon Mitchell," the officer says, "you're under arrest for assault on an elderly person and assault on a disabled person." Brandon laughs. "That old guy in the wheelchair was harassing me. I barely touched his chair." "Sir," Rodriguez responds, "you kicked his wheelchair twice. It's all on video." Brandon's arrogance is breathtaking. "My father is William Mitchell, CEO of Tech Core Industries, Fortune 500, Brandon sneers. "He plays golf with the governor. I suggest you think very carefully." As Officer Rodriguez places him in handcuffs, Brandon adds, "One phone call from me, and you'll be directing traffic." George is transported to Rhode Island Hospital. At 70 years old, with no legs, being slammed into a barrier can cause serious injuries. Doctors discover extensive bruising and trauma. Witness videos are uploaded online within hours. By evening, 3 million views. By morning, 7 million views. By noon, 14 million views. The footage shows everything. George's polite request, Brandon's contempt, the kicks, George nearly falling from his chair. Justice for George begins trending nationwide. 3 days later, Brandon appears before Judge Frank Caprio. He's charged with assault on an elderly person, assault on a disabled person, and illegal use of a handicapped parking space. The courtroom is packed. News cameras line the walls. Veteran organizations, disability rights advocates, and wheelchair users fill the accessible seating. George Sullivan sits in the front row in his wheelchair, bruises still visible along his arms. Brandon walks in wearing a designer suit, a $45,000 Rolex, and custom Italian leather shoes. His stride is confident, almost arrogant. His attorney is Richard Blackwell, from the most expensive law firm in all of New England. Judge Caprio looks up, already familiar with the viral footage that 14 million people have watched. "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Caprio says, "you are charged with assault on an elderly person, assault on a disabled person, and illegal use of a handicapped parking space. How do you plead?" Blackwell rises smoothly. "Not guilty, Your Honor. The video evidence lacks proper context." Judge Caprio raises a hand. "Mr. Blackwell, I asked your client." "Mr. Mitchell?" Brandon stands, straightening his expensive suit. "Not guilty." This is being blown way out of proportion. Some guy in a wheelchair got aggressive with me over parking. I defended myself, and now I'm being treated like I committed a crime. The gallery erupts into angry murmurs. George, seated in his wheelchair, closes his eyes. Mr. Mitchell, Judge Caprio says evenly, let's watch the video that 14 million people have already seen. The courtroom darkens as monitors display mall security footage and witness videos from multiple angles. Everyone watches in complete silence. The footage shows Brandon pulling into a handicapped space with no placard. George approaching politely. Brandon brushing him off. George calmly explaining that those spots are reserved for people who truly need them. Brandon boasting about his father being a billionaire CEO. Brandon kicking George's wheelchair. George nearly falling forward. Brandon kicking the chair again, harder, sending the 70-year-old, legless veteran rolling backward into a concrete barrier. When the videos end, the courtroom is both silent and seething. Mr. Mitchell, Judge Caprio says, that footage shows you kicking a 70-year-old disabled veteran's wheelchair twice. How exactly is this being blown out of proportion? Brandon shrugs. The camera angle makes it look worse than it was. I barely tapped his chair. He's exaggerating because of who my father is. The gallery explodes in outrage. George, sitting there with visible bruising, slowly shakes his head. George is sworn in and testifies, Your Honor, I'm 70 years old. I lost both my legs in Vietnam in 1969. I've been in a wheelchair for 56 years. That day, I saw Mr. Mitchell park illegally in a handicapped space. I politely asked him to move. He ignored me. When I explained that disabled people depend on those spots, he kicked my wheelchair. George pauses. When you don't have legs and someone kicks your wheelchair, you can't brace yourself. I nearly fell out. Then he kicked it again, harder. I rolled backward into a barrier. The impact bruised my back. Officer Rodriguez testifies next, describing Brandon's threats and behavior at the scene, and that's when Brandon makes the decision that will become one of the most viral courtroom moments in history. Sitting at the defense table, clearly bored, Brandon pulls out his iPhone. He opens Instagram and starts an Instagram live. The courtroom remains focused on testimony. No one notices at first. Brandon angles the phone to show the courtroom behind him, Judge Caprio partially visible in the background. He smiles into the camera. Hey guys, Brandon here. So I'm literally in court right now over this ridiculous parking thing. He rolls his eyes dramatically. This is so dumb. He adds a text overlay to the live stream. Watching this joke of a trial LOL. Speaking to his 47,000 followers watching live, he continues, some guy in a wheelchair is crying because I parked in a handicapped spot and barely touched his chair. This judge is acting like it's a huge deal. It's honestly hilarious. Comments flood the screen. Bro, why are you even in court for this? That's so stupid. Just pay the fine and leave. Your dad will get you out. Brandon grins at the camera. Yeah, my dad's going to handle this. This whole thing will be dismissed in like an hour, tops. He smirks, just waiting it out. But what Brandon doesn't realize is that one of the court reporters has noticed him, and a news photographer has already captured photos of him holding his phone, live streaming. Judge Caprio finishes questioning the witness, then slowly turns his attention toward the defense table. Mr. Mitchell, the judge asks, are you recording or broadcasting during these proceedings? Brandon looks up, his phone still in his hand, Instagram Live still running. Huh? Oh, I'm just on my phone, Your Honor. Judge Caprio's tone sharpens. Mr. Mitchell, are you live streaming this court hearing on social media? For a brief moment, concern flashes across Brandon's face. Then his arrogance takes over. I'm just showing my followers what's happening. This is a public courtroom. I'm allowed to be on my phone. Judge Caprio turns slightly. Bailiff, retrieve Mr. Mitchell's phone immediately. Brandon jerks back. You can't take my phone. That's my property. In my courtroom, during active proceedings, Judge Caprio says calmly, I absolutely can. Bailiff. The bailiff steps forward. Brandon actually tries to hide the phone. This is a violation of my rights. The bailiff takes the phone anyway. Instagram Live is still running. 47,000 people are watching. The stream shows the courtroom from Brandon's point of view. The defense table, the judge approaching. Judge Caprio takes the phone from the bailiff. The Instagram Live is still active. On the screen, he sees Brandon's face in the small broadcaster circle. He sees the comments pouring in. He sees the live viewer count .47000 watching live. He sees the caption, "Watching this joke of a trial LOL." Judge Caprio looks up at Mr. Mitchell. "You were live streaming this court hearing to 47,000 people on Instagram. You referred to this proceeding as a joke. You told your followers that your father will handle this. Is that correct?" Brandon's confidence begins to crack. "Your Honor, it was just for my followers. I didn't mean it." Judge Caprio interrupts. "Bailiff, can we display Mr. Mitchell's Instagram live on the courtroom monitors?" Within moments, the technical staff mirrors the live stream onto every screen in the courtroom. Everyone sees it. Brandon's face in the broadcaster circle. The courtroom behind him. The caption, "Watching this joke of a trial LOL." The comments, Brandon saying, "My dad's going to handle this." The gallery explodes in outrage. George looks devastated. Disability rights advocates sit frozen with fury. "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Caprio says evenly, "you kicked a 70-year-old wheelchair-bound Vietnam veteran. You threatened him using your father's wealth and position. And now you are live streaming your court hearing, calling it a joke, while telling 47,000 people your father will make this disappear. Do I have that correct?" Brandon has no answer. "I am holding you in contempt of court for live streaming during proceedings," Judge Caprio continues. "But more importantly, you referenced your father making this go away. Let's address that directly." Judge Caprio turns to the bailiff. "End the Instagram live immediately and contact William Mitchell, CEO of TechCore Industries. I want him connected to this courtroom by video call." Brandon panics. "Your Honor, please don't call my father. He's very busy. He doesn't need to be involved." Judge Caprio looks directly at him. "You involved him when you threatened Mr. Sullivan with his wealth and position. You involved him when you told your Instagram followers he would handle this. He is now involved." The Instagram live abruptly ends. Brandon's 47,000 followers watch the stream cut out without warning. 30 minutes later, the courtroom reconvenes. The video screen flickers on. William Mitchell, CEO of TechCore Industries, appears. He's in his late 50s, wearing a tailored suit, seated in what appears to be his executive office. Behind him are awards, framed photographs with world leaders, symbols of immense success, but his expression shows something no one expected: absolute devastation. "Your Honor," he says quietly, "I'm William Mitchell." Judge Caprio nods. "Mr. Mitchell, your son Brandon is before this court facing charges for assaulting a 70-year-old wheelchair-bound Vietnam veteran. During these proceedings, he went live on Instagram to 47,000 followers, referred to these proceedings as a joke, and stated that you would handle this. I'm giving you the opportunity to address this court." There is a long silence. When William Mitchell finally speaks, his voice is steady, controlled, but weighted with emotion. "Your Honor, I have watched the video that 14 million people have already seen. I watched my son park illegally in a handicapped space. I watched him kick a 70-year-old disabled veteran's wheelchair, not once, but twice. I heard him threaten Mr. Sullivan using my name, my company, and my wealth. And today, I learned that he live-streamed his own court hearing, calling it a joke." He pauses, taking a breath. "I spent 30 years building TechCore Industries, from a garage startup into a Fortune 500 company valued at $8 billion. We run disability inclusion programs. We donate millions to veteran organizations. We claim corporate responsibility as one of our core values. And yet my own son kicked a wheelchair-bound Vietnam veteran and believed my position would shield him." Judge Caprio leans forward. "Mr. Mitchell, what are you asking this court to do?" William answers without hesitation. "I'm asking you to treat my son exactly the same as any other 23-year-old who assaulted a disabled veteran. No favors. No protection. He must face the full consequences of his actions." Brandon tries to speak. "Dad, this judge is being unfair." "Brandon, stop," William snaps. "For once in your privileged life, be silent and face what you've done." William turns back to the bench. "Your Honor, I'm also announcing my resignation as CEO of TechCore Industries, effective 60 days from today. I cannot lead a company that advocates disability inclusion while my own son assaulted a wheelchair-bound veteran and believed my influence would protect him." Brandon breaks down. "Dad, please, don't resign." William doesn't waver. "Sorry isn't enough this time, Brandon." He continues, "I'm also making a personal commitment. I will donate $50 million from my personal assets, $25 million to paralyzed veterans of America and $25 million to disabled American veterans. This money will not come from corporate funds. I cannot undo what my son did, but I can honor the veteran he attacked and the community he disrespected. William turns toward George M. Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, I am deeply sorry. You served this country. You lost your legs defending our freedom. You've lived 56 years in a wheelchair, and my son kicked that wheelchair and threatened you. You deserve dignity and safety. My son showed you neither. The courtroom is stunned into silence. Meanwhile, clips from the Instagram Live spread everywhere. CEO's son mocks court on Instagram Live trends nationally. 18 million views. Judge Caprio delivers the sentence. Brandon Mitchell, you assaulted a 70-year-old wheelchair-bound Vietnam veteran. You kicked his wheelchair twice. You threatened him using your father's wealth. You illegally parked in a handicapped space. You live-streamed this court hearing and referred to it as a joke. He pauses. Your sentence is as follows: 18 months in county jail, suspended to 9 months with good behavior. A $50,000 fine. 800 hours of community service working with disabled veterans at VA hospitals. 3 years of probation. A formal written and in-person apology to Mr. Sullivan. And a complete ban from all social media for 2 years. 6 months later, Brandon meets George at a VA hospital. George sits in his wheelchair. Brandon stands in front of him. Mr. Sullivan, I kicked your wheelchair twice. I nearly caused you to fall. I threatened you with my father's money. I live-streamed my court hearing and called it a joke. I'm sorry. George responds calmly, with dignity. Brandon, I didn't lose my legs in Vietnam so powerful men's sons could kick my wheelchair without consequences. I served so that everyone would be equal under the law. Your father understood that. Judge Caprio understood that. And now, you understand it too. That Instagram Live, the one Brandon thought was entertainment, became the moment that taught him the most important lesson of his life, that is justice, that is integrity.